Yay. All persons have any business before the Honorable Beverly Cannody, Justice of the Norfolk Superior Court in the County of Norfolk. Draw near, give your attendance, you shall be heard. By saying the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, this court is now open. You may be seated.
22-117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Can I have counsel identify themselves for the record?
For the Commonwealth. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Lally.
Good morning, Your Honor. Laura McLaughlin for the
Good
Commonwealth.
morning, Ms. McLaughlin.
Good morning, Your Honor. Alan Jackson from Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Good morning, Your Honor. Elizabeth Little, also on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Ms. Little.
Good morning, Your Honor. David Yannetti for Karen Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Yannetti. Good morning, Ms. Reed. Good morning, jurors. I have to ask you those same three questions. Was everyone able to follow the instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone since we left yesterday?
Yes.
Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case?
Yes.
Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, even inadvertently, since we met yesterday? Okay, so I am going to see counsel at sidebar for just a moment. Most people said no. I will see the juror who raised her hand in just a minute. Are fine, and set to begin. So, Mr. Lally, your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth will call Mr. Christopher Albert to the stand.
Okay.
Watch your step up. I'm going to ask you to remain standing. Face the clerk. Sworn by raising your right hand.
You shall swear the evidence given to the court and jury in the case now in here to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anytime you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
It's Christopher Albert, A-L-B-E-R-T.
And where do you live, sir?
I live at 22 Maple Street, Unit L, Canton, Mass.
And how long have you lived there?
Almost 2 years. Sorry, go ahead.
And how long have you lived in Canton?
Since 1974.
And so pretty much your whole life.
Pretty much since I was 4.
And prior to living in Maple, where did you live in Canton before that?
7 Meadows Ave in Canton.
And how long did you live at 7 Meadows?
From 2001 to 2021, about 20 years.
And who, if anyone, do you live with now?
I live with my wife, Julie, my oldest son, who just came home from the Navy, my middle son, Colin, and my youngest son, Dylan.
And how long have you and your wife, Julie, been married?
Roughly, gosh, you're going to kill me. 21 years, around 21 years.
You mentioned you and your wife, Julie, you have 3 sons?
Yep.
And how old are they?
My oldest is 25, my middle is 20, and my youngest is 16.
Now, do you work, sir?
Yes, I do.
What do you do for work?
I'm self-employed. I own a small pizza shop.
What's the name of the pizza?
It's called D&E Pizza.
And how long have you owned that?
25 years this March.
And prior to that, did you work sort of in the same industry?
Same industry pretty much my whole life.
And does your wife work?
She does not.
Does she help out with the D&E Pizza Shop?
She does some of this behind-the-scenes stuff, yes.
Now, when you lived on Meadows Avenue, did you have occasion to become familiar with someone named John O'Keefe?
Yes, I did.
And how is it that you knew John O'Keefe?
So he bought the 1 Meadows Ave, the top house, I don't know exactly, maybe like 2017. So he became my neighbor. And I guess just from me driving by his house and coming home, I saw him, would wave to him and stuff. And that's how I initially became to know who John was.
And you mentioned he bought the house at sort of the top of the street, is that correct?
Yeah, it's if you're coming off Pleasant, you take a right down Meadows, it's the first on the right.
And then on Meadows Ave, about how many houses are on Meadows?
Well, between us or on the whole street, you mean?
First down the whole street and then between.
Yeah, so roughly on that whole street, I would say there's like close to 30 houses from top to bottom on both sides.
And then how about in between 1 and 7?
So there's 2. There's 2 houses between mine and John's.
And your house is both odd numbers, are they on the same side?
Same side, yeah.
Now, you said that that's how you initially came to know John O'Keefe. How did your relationship sort of go on from there?
So over the years, like he was friendly with some other folks that I was friends with. So we maybe be out occasionally and bump into him, but he would also come to my pizza shop a lot. He would take his nephew, Patrick, in my pizza shop a lot. So it was not uncommon for him to stop by a couple days a week. Usually just grab a slice.
Now, you grew up in Canton, correct?
Yes,
And do you have any siblings?
I do. I have 6.
And what are the names of your 6 siblings?
So my oldest is my older brother, Brian. I have a sister, Kathleen. I have she's older than me. And then I'm next in line. And then I have a brother, Kevin. Then a brother, Keith, Brendan, and Timmy. 7 of us.
Where is it that you sort of fit in that sort of?
I'm the 3rd oldest.
Now, your older brother, Brian, what does he do for work?
He's a Boston police officer, or he was. He's recently retired.
And your brother, Kevin, what does he do?
He's a Canton police officer.
And John O'Keefe, were you familiar with what he did for work?
Yes, yeah, I knew he was a Boston police officer as well.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022. Do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
And do you recall what day of the week that was?
It's a Friday, I believe.
And were you working at the D&E Pizza Shop on that day?
I was.
And at some point in time in the afternoon, who, if anyone of note, sort of came into D&E?
John came in that day with his nephew, Patrick.
And you recall, what did they get that day?
I think they just got 2 slices of pizza, if I recall correctly.
And what, if any, conversation did you have with Mr. O'Keefe as far as plans for later in the year?
So he asked me if I had any plans that night, and I said, unfortunately, it's Friday, and I'm working pretty much till close. And I said, but it's my nephew's birthday, and I know a bunch of people are heading out, and I was planning on meeting up with them later when I got out of work. So I think I said to him, I said to him, I'll shoot you a text later if you're around. Maybe we can hook up.
So in that sense, sort of, how would you describe your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe?
Oh, it was a good relationship. Yeah.
Would you consider yourself friends?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, pushing forward on January 28th, about what time was it, if you know, that you sort of closed up shop that night?
So the shop stays open until 10. I know that I left sometime a little bit before 10. I had my wife drop me off some clothes it was like a ritual. She would, because those nights are tough for me to get out early and go home. So she dropped me off some clothes, and I remember just changing quick, washing up a little bit, and then leaving. So I think I left before the store actually closed a few minutes.
Now, during the time or prior to you leaving the pizza shop, what, if any, conversation via text did you have with Mr. O'Keefe?
He asked where I was. I said I was still working. And he said something like, why don't you talk to the boss, see if you can get out of there? And I just said, I'm married to this place. It's tough. I'll text you when I leave. And then I shot him a text, I think, when I got down to Waterfall. And I said, where are you? And go ahead. Sorry.
And where did he say that he was?
He was at CF McCarthy's.
Are you familiar with both of those establishments as far as CF McCarthy's and Waterfall?
Yes, I am.
And with regard to your pizza shop, where is CF McCarthy's in relation to that, and where is Waterfall in relation to that?
So if I was sitting at my front door looking out, CF McCarthy's would be to my right, and Waterfall would be down the street, diagonal, maybe like 200 yards on the opposite side of the street.
So both sort of walking distance from where you work?
Yeah.
Now, your home on Maple, where is that in relation to those businesses on Washington Street, including your own?
So Maple Street is like, probably from my pizza shop is maybe like a 5-minute walk. You know, it's not far. And a little closer to Waterfall. So maybe it's like a 7-minute walk from D&E and like a 5-minute walk from Waterfall.
And are there any sort of, in the area where you live, is there any sort of like town buildings or anything like that?
Yeah, so I kind of live behind the library. Like you take a left on Maple, and the library is like 2 buildings after me on the left-hand side. And then the town hall is a little further down on the right.
And the library that's around where you live, is that the only public library?
That's the, besides what's inside schools, yeah, that's the only public library.
And so, again, I'm sorry, but what time is it that you leave D&E to go to Waterfall?
Just before 10, maybe like 9:50-ish.
And as far as meeting up with people, who is it that directs you to go to Waterfall specifically?
I think my wife said, are you coming down? Are you there? She was down there, so I had a conversation with her. I think that's how I headed down there.
You went there to meet your wife, correct?
Yeah, she was down there.
And you've been to the Waterfall before?
Yes.
And so when you walk into the Waterfall, where did you go as far as, who, if anyone, did you recognize when you came?
So it's pretty much when you walk in, it's just kind of like open. And my wife was there. Matt was there. Matt McCabe was there. Jen McCabe was there. My sister-in-law, Nicole, was there. My niece, Caitlin, was there. I think when I first walked in, that's who was there.
And you mentioned Jennifer and Matthew McCabe, is that right?
Yeah.
And how do you know them?
Well, I grew up with, I didn't grow up with Jen. She's younger than me, but she's lived in Canton for a long time. My brother Brian is married to her sister, Nicole. So I've known her pretty much my whole life.
And you were testifying earlier about some of the people that you and Mr. O'Keefe sort of knew in common. Would Mrs. McCabe be one of those people?
Yes, yeah.
And when you walk in, relative to the establishment, whereabouts were those people situated?
So they were on like a table that was close to the bar. It's like set up. They have like 3 tables in a row, and I think we were maybe either in the middle or the next table to the bar.
So with those 3 sort of tables together, if you know about how long a table are we talking about?
I would say they're about a 6-foot table.
And was this a low top, high top, or something?
It's like a high top.
And located close to the bar, is that correct?
Yes.
What, if anything, do you recall from that evening as far as entertainment within the waterfall?
There was a live band that was playing to the side.
About how close to your table was the live band?
Oh, within like 6 or 7 feet, probably.
Fair to say, pretty loud in there?
Pretty loud, yeah.
And when you walk in, where do you go in reference to sort of the other people that's there?
I go right over to the table, and I think I walked right over, said hello to them, sat down.
And what, if anything, did you order when you got there?
I ordered a beer.
And did you eat while you were there as well?
I did, yeah. I was starving. I didn't eat all day, so I ordered some food, appetizers.
And throughout the course of the evening, what is it? You're at a bar, so you're drinking, correct?
Sure.
And what were you drinking?
Miller Lite.
Is that sort of normally what you would drink when you go out?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that initially when you get there, it's yourself, your brother Brian, his wife, the McCabe's, and your niece Caitlin. Is that correct?
No, my brother Brian wasn't there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, my wife, Caitlin, and Nicole.
Thank you for correcting.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry.
So at some point shortly after that, or at some points, who, if anyone else, arrives and sort of joins your table, your group?
So my brother Brian and a gentleman named Brian Higgins, they came and joined us.
And is Brian Higgins, is that someone that you had met previously?
Yeah, a few times.
And how did you know him?
I don't know how I initially met him, but probably just seen him around. I knew that he worked as an ATF agent. I knew that he worked inside the Canton Police Department, so I think I knew him from that, just being around.
Fair to say you knew him sort of through your brothers, either Brian or Kevin or both?
Yeah, that's the only way I met him.
And about how long after you arrived was it that they arrived?
I would probably within like 35 minutes, roughly.
And what, if anything, did you know about sort of where they had been prior to or what they had been doing earlier?
So they were in New York at a police officer's funeral. They went there for the ceremony, and the snowstorm was coming, so they decided that they were going to drive back early to beat the storm.
You mentioned, as far as going out on that particular evening, what was that in reference to?
So my nephew, Brian, it was his birthday.
And so when you say your nephew, Brian, whose son is that?
So that's my older brother, Brian's son, Brian.
So Brian Jr.?
Brian Jr., yeah, we call him Brian Jr. Yeah.
And was he present at the waterfall that night?
He wasn't, no. He decided that he didn't want to go out.
And when your brother, your older brother Brian and Mr. Higgins come in, where is it that they go sort of in relation to the group?
So they walk in and they come directly over to the table.
Now, at some point later in the evening, who, if anyone else, also joins your group or your table?
So John O'Keefe came with Karen Reed.
And how did you know Karen Reed at that time?
I met her a couple times. She also had been in the pizza shop a couple times, and driving by the street when I would come home, she would be outside One Meadows.
And just to be clear, when we're speaking about Ms. Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
you just identify as to where she's seated? Or
She's sitting right over there between the two attorneys.
just ask the record to reflect identification of the defendant?
Okay.
Now, prior to Mr. O'Keefe coming into the waterfall, you had mentioned some text communications with him, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if any, other communications did you have with Mr. O'Keefe before he got there?
I don't think, nothing before I got to the waterfall?
Not before you got to the waterfall, before Mr. O'Keefe got to the waterfall.
With Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
Just that where was he, or where were we going? Where was he going to be?
What, if any, communication do you recall in regard to who was there or who was going to be there?
With Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think at some point he said, who's there? And I said, my brother Brian. I said, Brian. And he said, your brother Brian? I said, yeah, Brian and Brian Higgins are there. And he said, where's your brother Kevin? And I said, I have no clue. LOL or something.
And when Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed come into the bar, where is it that they go upon coming back?
They walked directly in, came towards our table, just a striked up conversation. I think John came over to my wife and said hello to her first, maybe, and then just kind of got with the group, started talking.
Now, fair to say Mr. O'Keefe knew your wife, Julie, as well?
Yes,
And how would you describe their relationship as far as you?
good relationship.
And when Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant come over to the area where you and your wife is, what, if anything, did you observe the defendant to do?
Well, when they came over, I think they started talking. At one point, when they first came over, the defendant came in with a glass underneath her jacket, and I thought that was kind of funny, and I laughed about it and made a comment about it.
And what, if anything, did you notice sort of about the glass? What was in the glass? Anything like that?
It was just a tall, like, cylinder glass with some clear liquid in it and a lime.
And that was under her coat when she came in?
Yeah, it was like she pulled it out.
If you know about what time was it that Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed came in?
So I got there close to 10, I would say 10:45-ish, to the best of my recollection.
And following sort of the blows and all that kind of stuff, as far as after they first came in, where did they go from there?
I think the defendant sat down, and I think well, John went to the bar and got a beer.
And you know, is that sort of what John would typically drink?
Yeah, Bud Light, I think.
And you mentioned that the defendant sat down. Where does she sit down in relation to you and your wife?
I think right next to, next to my wife.
Now, with regard to just how would you describe sort of the general sort of tone or demeanor within the group at the waterfall that night?
It was fine. Everyone was just having a good time.
So no arguments, anything like that?
No, not at all.
And specifically between Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, what, if anything, did you observe between them?
I didn't notice anything abnormal.
Now, if you recall, what was Mr. O'Keefe wearing on that evening?
Blue jeans, baseball hat, and kind of like a pullover light sweatshirt type of grayish garment. I don't know what you would call it. It wasn't like a hoodie, and it's like a long sleeve shirt.
Is that what he was wearing when he walked in?
Yes.
At any point in time, did you see him with like a jacket or anything like that?
No.
Now, as far as your observations of Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, did you observe about that clothing as far as any tears or any dishevelment of it at all?
No, I didn't notice anything. It looked fine to me.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe, his person himself, what, if anything, did you observe as far as any injuries or anything like that? When you saw him?
Didn't see anything. Looked normal.
Now, after Mr. O'Keefe went to the bar and got a beer, do you know where he went from there?
Just came back over to the table, started chatting people up.
And when you say the table, was that sort of your area, or was there a different area that he was?
No, the same table, the same high top. Some people sitting, some people standing.
And as far as sort of this length that you described, about 6 feet or so of that table, if you recall, sort of where were people situated around the table?
I mean, I was sitting at one point because I was eating, so I was sitting in one seat. My wife was sitting in another seat. Matt and Jen was sitting in another seat. I recall John standing a lot. I don't think he sat at all. I think Karen was sitting at one point, probably like situated near, maybe across from my wife or next to my wife.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, do you recall anything specific that you discussed or talked about while you were there that night?
No, nothing in particular.
And throughout sort of the course of the time that you were there, what, if any, discussion was there as to going someplace or wanting to go someplace after the waterfall?
So we have this like little ritual that when one of my nieces or nephews turn 21, we go back to the pizza shop, like, you know, after hours and turn on the oven and make pizzas and stuff. And there was talk about going back there. Miss Reed asked if we could go back and make pizzas up at my pizza shop a couple times. And then there was some talk about maybe after, someone mentioned going back to my brother's house after.
And just to be clear, your brother's house, which brother?
My brother Brian.
And where did your brother Brian live then?
34 Fairview.
You familiar with that address?
Yeah, I used to live there, grew up there.
So prior to it being your brother Brian's house, was that your parents' house?
My parents' house, yeah.
So that's where you and your siblings essentially grew up from the time that you moved to Canton?
Yes.
Now, as far as going over to your pizza shop to make pizzas, things like that, is that something that the defendant talked about once or more than once?
A few times.
And you referenced sort of this ritual when one of your nieces or nephews turned 21, and it was your nephew Brian Jr.'s birthday the following day, is that correct?
Yeah,
Was he turning 21 at that point?
I think so. I can't remember exactly if he was 20 or 21. I think he was turning 21 though.
So in relation to this evening of January 28th, that sort of ritual that you were talking about, when was the last time before January 28th that you had done that, if you know?
Trying to see who else turned 21. Can't remember exactly. I know it was recent. I remember doing it. I just can't remember the date.
And that's all I'm really asking, sir.
Yeah.
Was it recent to January 28th?
Yeah, it was sometime before that, but within like a couple of months, I think someone turned 21. Maybe we just went there.
And so what, if any, conversation from your end as far as, obviously it's your pizza shop, so
Yeah.
what, if any, conversation from your end was there in reference to doing that?
To doing that night. So we were doing a weight loss competition, me, Matt McCabe, and my brother Brian. And we had like 2 more weeks left in it. And we do it, every year it's like a charity, we do it. And the proceeds go to like scholarship funds. So I said no because we were doing this weight loss challenge and I just didn't want to give in and, you know, eat pizza 2 weeks before we were weighing in.
And your wife, Julie, how long was she at the bar for?
Not long when I got there. She probably was only there for maybe 35, 40 minutes. She had a migraine. She wanted to go home, so she left.
So she indicated she had a migraine and she was going home?
Yeah, she didn't feel well.
And was that before or after Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed arrived?
She left after they arrived. So then she must have left later than that. Yeah.
Now, later on in the evening, what, if anything, did you buy for the group?
So at one point towards the end of the night, I bought a round of Fireball shots for the group.
And who partook in that, if you know?
I don't remember exactly. Probably half of the people there took them. I don't remember everyone. I wasn't paying attention.
And when you say sort of towards the end of the night, when was it that things sort of wrapped up with the water?
I think they called last call at right before 12. Pretty much right before 12, it all started wrapping up.
And as far as the group that you were with at the high top table, who, if anyone, from that group left first?
So my wife left first. Obviously, she didn't feel well. She left earlier. Brian and Brian left. My sister-in-law left. Matt and Jen left. I left probably second to last. I probably left last with John and Karen, or right around the time that John and Karen left.
And do you recall, as far as you're leaving around the same time, do you recall walking out together or seeing them outside, or where is it that you recall sort of leaving at the same time?
My best recollection is I walked out roughly the same time, and I walked out the building, and I come up Washington to the right, and they were either shortly after or shortly before me, and they walk up to the left.
And when you say walk up Washington, did you walk home that night?
Yeah, I walked home.
And when you came out of the bar, what, if anything, did you notice sort of about the weather or what was going on with that?
It just started snowing. It was cold out, and it just started snowing. The ground had like a light coat.
Could you still sort of see the street? Or the,
Oh, yeah, you could still see it.
And you mentioned you walked out towards Washington, and Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed did as well?
Yes.
And which direction? Did you go in the same direction, different direction?
But when you come out the building, you have to go to the left in order to get onto Washington. So I come out to the left and then go to the right onto Washington, and they would go to the left onto Washington.
They were sort of walking
Opposite directions.
on Washington.
Yes.
Now, as far as throughout sort of the course of the evening, did you have occasion to see sort of what Mr. O'Keefe mentioned, that he went to the bar and he got a beer? Was that the only beer that you saw him having, or did he have more than one?
I'm sure he had more than one. Yeah, I saw him with more than one.
So you saw him, but essentially what I'm asking is throughout the course of the evening when you saw him drinking, other than maybe the fireball shot, you saw him just drinking beer?
Just beer. Yeah.
And as far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if anything, did you observe her drinking throughout the course of the evening?
Just a clear liquid in a glass. I assume it was some sort of vodka drink.
Was that the same glass that she had come into the establishment with under her coat, or was it a different glass later on?
I believe it was the same one.
So you leave from the waterfall and you're walking home, is that right?
Correct.
So fair to say you didn't go to 34 Fairview that night?
I did not.
And about what time was it that you got home?
Sometime between, I'd say 5 past and 10 past 12, somewhere in that window.
And was your wife home at that point?
She was.
And as far as your children were concerned, how many of your 3 sons were living with you at that time?
At that time, 2. My 16-year-old, well, he wasn't 16 years old at the time, but my 16-year-old and my 20-year-old.
And so 16 and 20 now, is that?
16 and 20 now, so that'd be like 14 and 18 then, I guess.
And so your oldest son?
He was in San Diego in the Navy.
And if you know, or did you check or anything as far as your kids when you got home, were they there, if you know?
No, I ran right upstairs. I was freezing. I went right into my room.
Essentially, you went to bed, is that correct?
Correct.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to publish for the jury just a small portion from what's been marked as Exhibit 53, the waterfall surveillance.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have from Channel 3 the second video down. You could just pause there for a moment, Ms. Gilman. Mr. Albert, looking up at the screen, do you recognize generally what's depicted up on that screen?
Yeah, so those are the tables that I was speaking of that are like, there's like 2 or 3 in a row. Yep.
I'm sorry, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I don't have any.
My apologies. Thank you very much. So, sir, what I'm handing to you is a laser pointer. Basically, just click that button and point it up. Okay. Mr. Albert, using that laser pointer that I just handed to you, if you could direct the jury's attention to about where the high top is and then about where you were seated at that high top.
So here's the high top. And I can't really see myself, to be honest with you, this far away. But somewhere, I think I ate on this side here.
And as far as the bar is concerned, where would that be?
Back here. Wait. So this is from walking into the waterfall. Okay, so the bar is after, so that's the high top next to the bar. The bar's back there.
And as far as the band that you were talking about that was playing, if you could direct the jury's attention to where that was.
On this side over here. It's kind of fuzzy, but that side.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to fast forward to 1054. And, I would ask if you could play that from 1054 to about 1056. I'm sorry, if you could just pause briefly, Ms. Gilman.
Professional invoices can be paid faster. All with
Now, Mr. Alba, looking up at the screen, as far as the door that you came out and the door that you eventually exited from the waterfall, do you see sort of that general area and where that is in the video?
No, because I think it's offline here. I think it would be over here.
So it would be off sort of towards the left, is that correct?
Yeah, like down this way.
Ms. Gilman, if you could press play. As far as two individuals sort of walking in, do you recognize who those individuals are?
I do. That's John O'Keefe and Miss Reed.
And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could just run it through 1056. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. You can take that down. Now, Mr. Albert, as far as your son, Colin, do you know sort of where he was that night?
Yes. So he was at my brother Brian's house for my nephew's birthday.
And he came home sometime after you, is that correct?
Correct.
And essentially you came in, went to bed, so do you know what time your son came home that night?
I know that.
Do you know, just answer yes or no whether you know.
Yes.
And how do you know that, sir?
Because he opened the bedroom door and said, "Good night, guys. I love you. I'm home."
And about how long after you got home was it that your son came home?
I'd say within 10 minutes.
And as far as sort of coming into your room, is that something that was required of your kids when they came home?
He would always do that, yeah. That was something just to let us know that they were home.
Now, turning your attention to the next day on the 29th, about obviously at some point you woke up. Do you recall about what time that was?
Eight-ish, 8:30-ish.
So sometime between 8 and 8:30?
Yeah. I was still in bed. I woke up, but I didn't leave my room.
And what was it that, or who was it that woke you up that morning?
At that time, I just woke up on my own.
And when you woke up, what happened after you woke up?
Shortly after I woke up, my wife entered the room, but that was a little bit later. I don't know exactly what time. And she informed me that something had happened to John.
And what was it that she told you?
I don't know the exact words that she said, but basically that John had died.
And what, if anything, did she indicate to you as to where John had died?
That he was found somewhere on the front lawn of 34 Fairview.
And receiving that information, where did you go, or where did you and your wife?
I was in shock. I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?" And then I jumped up, and she's like, "Let's we have to go over. Let's go over to your brother's house."
And about what time was it, if you know, that you got over to your brother's house?
Sometime approximately like after 9 o'clock. I don't remember exactly what time we went over there, maybe 9 or 9:30.
And when you arrived at your brother's house, who, if anyone, was there?
To the best of my recollection, from what I remember, I was there. My wife was there. My brother Brian, Nicole, Brian Higgins was there. I believe Matt McCabe was there, and Jen McCabe was there.
When you came into the home, sort of where were they in relation?
Just sitting at the kitchen table.
And if you know, about how long did you stay at your brother's house when you came over?
Maybe an hour.
And where did you go from there?
Afterwards, just home.
Now, as far as subsequent to this, at some point within the days that followed, did you have occasion to speak with some troopers or members of the state police?
Yes, I did.
And how many troopers from the state police did you talk to when you spoke?
2.
And where was that?
At my condo.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Mr. Albert, you and I have never met, correct?
I don't believe so.
You've testified that you've essentially lived in Canton your whole life, correct?
Correct.
Moved there when you were 4 years old?
Correct.
And the house to which you and your family moved was 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes.
You lived there for how long?
33 years?
And you currently own D&E Pizza in Canton?
Correct.
I believe you testified that you've owned it for approximately 25 years?
Correct.
Clearly, you have a lot of ties to the city of Canton. Would you agree?
Sure.
You live there?
Yes.
You work there?
Yes.
You have family there?
Yep.
You raised your kids there?
Yep.
And you also are a town selectman in the city of Canton. Or
Recently elected.
the town of Canton, I should say.
It's a town, correct.
And not only that, but your brother, Kevin Albert, is a police officer in Canton?
He is.
Your brother, Brian Albert, with whom you grew up, is currently retired, but had been a Boston police officer who lived in Canton, correct?
Correct.
You would agree with me that Brian Albert only moved from Canton after John O'Keefe was found dead on his front lawn, correct?
Can you rephrase that?
I'll phrase it the exact same way and ask for a yes or no if you can do that. You would agree with me that your brother Brian Albert only moved from Canton after John O'Keefe was found dead on his front lawn?
Objection.
Can you answer that? Can you answer that?
Yeah, I just don't understand the phrase, but he moved shortly after that, yes.
Your brother Tim Albert lives with your parents in Canton, correct?
Correct.
And Tim Albert and your parents live directly across the street from the Canton Police Department, correct?
Correct.
Do you know whom they bought that house from?
Objection.
The objection sustained.
But you still live in Canton
Correct.
with your wife Julie Albert
Correct.
and your son Colin Albert, correct?
Along with my other two sons, yes.
And you would agree that your entire family has deep roots in the town of Canton?
I guess.
You would agree with me that the Albert family is well known in the town of Canton?
We have a big family.
And you would agree with me that the Albert family is a powerful family in the town of Canton?
Objection.
Sustained.
As a town selectman, you have some power, do you not?
I'm one of 5 selectmen.
And as a police detective, Kevin Albert has some power, does he not?
Objection.
Sustained.
And you also have close friends on the Canton Police Department, do you not?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
I have some.
Now, you know that Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor is the lead investigator on this case, correct?
I know that.
One of your wife's best friends is Michael Proctor's sister, Courtney Proctor, correct?
Objection.
Okay, that's sustained. You've got another witness you can ask that of, Mr. Yannetti.
You know Courtney Proctor, correct?
Objection.
Allowed.
Yes,
And you know her to be Michael Proctor's sister, correct?
that's correct.
You attended Michael Proctor's sister's wedding, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Sure. Why don't you come on over?
I believe you testified, sir, that you've known Michael Proctor's sister for about 20 years.
Objection.
I don't think he said that, but we'll let that stand and then move on, please.
About 20 years. You testified.
Or if that's,
I believe, didn't you testify to that on direct examination just moments ago when Mr. Lally was asking you questions?
objection, Your Honor.
Next question, Mr. Unity, objection sustained.
How long have you known Michael Proctor for?
I mean, I know he's Courtney's sister, brother. I couldn't tell you exactly how long I've known him for.
About 15 years or so?
Roughly.
All right. Who is Kenneth Berkowitz,
The former Canton police chief.
and how do you know him?
His son and my son, the same age. So they played on some sports teams when they were younger together. I think that's when I first came to know Ken.
You became friendly with him.
I became friendly with him, sure.
And how would you characterize your relationship with him?
Friends?
You've seen him socially.
Really.
You've been out for drinks with him.
I think maybe once.
And you've known him for how long?
20 plus years.
And you say you've only been out with him for drinks one time in those 20 years?
I can't even remember if it was with drinks one time. Yeah, no.
What other types of activities have you done together?
I can't think of any. I think he came to an event that I held one time. That's about it.
Have you been out with him in a group setting?
That event that I just mentioned, yeah.
And what event was that?
It was my campaign event when I was running for select board.
He was one of your supporters.
He came by.
Did he donate money to your campaign?
I think he did.
May we approach, Judge?
Yes.
Sir, I'm going to display a photograph with the court's permission on the screen, and I'd ask you to take a look at it, and if you can let the jury know.
Do you have a hard copy of it?
Yes, we do have a hard copy.
So why don't you show it to the witness and
Happy
put it
to
in
do that.
evidence?
Thank you, Ron.
Okay. And we'll take that into evidence and then.
That makes sense. May I approach, Judge?
Yes.
Okay, sir, I've handed you a photograph. Do you recognize what that depicts?
Yes.
What does it depict?
Me and Kenny Berkowitz.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of you and Kenny Berkowitz?
You mean is the picture us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would offer that, Your Honor.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
55.
Oh.
May that be published to the jury on the screen, Your Honor?
Sure.
So, Mr. Albert, that's obviously you on the right and Kenny Berkowitz on the left.
Correct.
Have you seen that photo before?
I believe I've seen it.
Do you recall when?
I believe that's my fundraiser for when I was running for the select board, that event that I spoke of earlier.
Okay. And when would it have been that you saw that photograph?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it was on my Facebook page when I was running for select board. It looks familiar.
Has Mr. Lally shown you that photograph?
No.
Has he informed you that the defense would be introducing that photograph during this trial?
Nope.
You can take the photo down, Mr. Bates. And the lights can go off. You would agree with me that one of your functions as a selectman is to oversee public safety in the town?
Yes.
And you would agree that the police department is a key component of public safety in the town of Canton?
Yes.
So part of your duties as a town selectman is to oversee the Canton Police Department, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll let him have it. Is that one of your duties, sir?
I believe so. I'm new at that. I'm recently elected, so I'm just going through it. But yeah, I believe so.
And you became a town selectman shortly after Kenny Berkowitz retired, correct?
I'm not sure when Kenny retired.
But you would agree with me that Kenny Berkowitz has both personal and professional relationships with you and members of your family, correct?
Can you rephrase that?
You would agree with me that the former Canton Police Chief, Kenny Berkowitz, has both personal and professional relationships with you and members of your family.
Objection, Your Honor. It's the same question.
Go ahead and answer that question.
I'm not sure I agree with that question.
Well, your brother Kevin Albert worked under Chief Berkowitz, correct?
Correct.
Would you consider that to be a professional relationship?
With them too, yes.
And your brother Brian Albert attended Chief Berkowitz's retirement party, did he not?
I have no idea.
But your brother Brian is also a friend of Kenny Berkowitz, is he not?
He may be, not sure.
And as far as your ties to the Canton Police, you would agree with me that Lieutenant Michael Lank is a member of the Canton Police Department, correct?
He is.
And you've been friends with him for years, correct?
I've known him for a long time.
You've been childhood friends with him since the age of 12, correct?
Somewhere around there, maybe earlier.
And you're tight with him.
I don't know if I call it tight.
He's not an enemy of yours, is he?
Oh, God, no.
No, he's a friend of yours, correct?
Sure.
And does sure mean yes?
Yes.
Now, your older brother, Brian, you've already testified, was a Boston police officer for years, correct?
Correct.
And he achieved some notoriety on a television show, did he not?
Objection.
Okay.
He was in the fugitive unit?
Correct.
And you know that your brother Brian was also a trained boxer, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Brian is a lot bigger guy than you are, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your brother Brian Albert is someone who is close to his family, correct?
Yes.
And when I say his family, I'm talking about not just his wife and children, but also his extended family, correct?
Yes.
You were part of his family, obviously, correct?
Yes.
And your son Colin is part of his family, correct?
Yes.
The Albert family is close, correct?
Yes.
You all essentially grew up in Canton, correct?
Correct.
And you hung out with each other growing up, correct?
We were siblings, so
Of course.
yes.
And you still hang out with each other quite often, correct?
Like all of us,
In various combinations.
we have different relationships with my siblings.
Sure. But you see some more than others, but you hang out with your family, do you not?
Yeah, mostly during holidays,
And you go out for drinks together, correct?
occasionally.
And you're protective of each other, correct?
Like most families.
And if someone had a dispute with a member of the Albert family, Brian wouldn't be happy about that, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
You know that Brian would stick up for your kids, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your son Colin is particularly close to your brother Brian, is he not?
Objection.
I'll let him have that. Do you know?
Yes.
In fact, your son Colin was a football player through high school, was he not?
Yes.
What was his number?
In high school?
Yes.
34, I believe.
And was that for 34 Fairview?
I don't think so.
Now, you testified you moved to Maple Street in Canton not long before January 28th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And before that, you lived at 7 Meadows Ave in Canton?
Correct.
And that was when John O'Keefe was your neighbor, correct?
Correct.
I believe you testified he was a couple of houses away from you?
Yes.
And he was your neighbor for a series of years, was he not?
Yes.
While he was living in the neighborhood, you knew that he was working as a Boston police officer, correct?
Correct.
And you were familiar with him, correct?
What do you mean? What do you mean by familiar?
You knew who he was. You know, you became familiar with him.
Yeah, he was my neighbor. I knew who he was.
And you knew that he was not married, correct?
Yes.
And at a certain point, you knew that he was dating Karen Reed.
Yeah, at some point.
Now, you would agree with me that your family has a police background, sir, correct?
I wouldn't agree with that statement.
2 of your brothers are or were police officers, correct?
Out of 7 of us, yes.
And you knew friends of your brothers who were also police officers or in law enforcement, correct?
Correct.
And you had already testified that you know some members of the Canton Police Department, correct?
Correct.
And you socialized with police officers, did you not?
Have I? Sure.
You've been to bars with police officers, correct?
Correct.
And you've drank with police officers, right?
Sure.
And you were friendly with police officers, correct?
Yes.
And with regard to, I'd like to ask you some questions about people specifically connected to this case. We've established that Lieutenant Lank has been a friend of yours for years, correct?
Yes.
We've established that you know former police chief Kenneth Berkowitz in such a way that you feel comfortable calling him before this jury Kenny Berkowitz, correct?
I know Kenny. Yep.
And he's actually donated to your campaign when you were running for town selectman, correct?
Correct.
And you also knew Michael Proctor prior to January 29th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
You've attended social events together with him, have you not?
Objection.
I'll let that one question.
Couple.
So, at some point, Michael Proctor came to question you, did he not?
Along with another trooper, correct.
And at the point in time when Michael Proctor came to question you, you knew who he was, correct?
Yes.
You knew him by face, correct?
Correct.
And you knew him by name, correct?
Correct.
There was no need for Michael Proctor to formally introduce himself to you, was there?
Objection.
Sustained.
What did he say when he first walked in the door in terms of introductions?
Objection.
Sustained.
They would be seen as side by side.
Sure.
Without getting into the precise wording, you'd agree with me that there was no need for Michael Proctor to formally introduce himself to you for that meeting, correct?
Yes.
He didn't need to say, "How do you do? I am Michael Proctor," correct?
No.
No. Do you consider the Proctors to be the Albert second family?
Objection.
Do you consider that?
No.
You are aware that there are members of the Proctors family who have posted publicly that the Alberts
Objection,
are
Your
their
Honor.
second family, correct?
So the objection is sustained, and I'm striking that question. Disregard.
Now, at the time that Trooper Michael Proctor showed up to question you, sir, you knew that Karen Reed had been charged in this case, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that John O'Keefe had been found dead on your brother's lawn, correct?
Correct.
Did it occur to you that it was odd that the state police sent somebody from the Proctor family to interview you
Objection, Your Honor.
on February 10th of 2022?
Sustained.
All right. Now, you've testified that on January 28th of 2022, that day, that Friday that you were working, John O'Keefe stopped into D&E Pizza, your shop, correct?
Correct.
And there was discussion about whether you would be going out that night, and if so, where you would be, correct?
Correct.
Now, you've previously, on direct examination, characterized your relationship with him as being friends, correct?
Correct.
It's fair to say, however, that prior to January 28th of 2022, you had never exchanged personal information with John O'Keefe, correct?
You mean, I'm sorry, you mean like phone numbers or but?
A cell number prior to that day.
No, I didn't.
And at that point in time, he had lived in your neighborhood for 4 to 5 years, correct?
Correct.
So I believe you've testified that that night after working, you went out around 10 minutes of 10 p.m.?
Roughly.
Before going out, did you have anything alcoholic to drink?
Think I may have had a beer at my pizza shop. I don't remember exactly.
So you have a refrigerator there that you can keep drinks cold, correct?
Among other things.
And you do have beers in that fridge for
Sometimes.
personal use?
Sometimes.
Do you know how many beers that you would have had before going out?
No.
And would you have drank that beer as you were cleaning up at the end of the night?
Probably.
Did you have anything to eat at the pizza shop?
No.
When did you last eat before you went out at 9:50 or so?
When did I last eat?
Yes.
It's a long time ago. I'm not sure.
And you knew that your wife, Julie, was starting the night at C.F. McCarthy's, correct?
Yes.
And you couldn't meet her there because you were still working, right?
Correct.
But at some point you heard that Julie and others were headed to the waterfall, correct?
Yes.
And that was where you planned to go after you closed up D&E Pizza.
Correct.
With regard to the time that you left, 9:50 or so is your best estimate of when you're closing the doors and walking over to the waterfall?
Yes.
And the waterfall is a short walk to D&E Pizza,
Yes.
maybe about 3 minutes?
About that.
And your plan was to walk there that night, correct?
Correct.
You had not taken a car to D&E Pizza anyway, right?
I don't believe so.
So what time did you get to the waterfall?
Shortly before 10. I don't know exactly.
All right. And yeah, I believe you've testified that John O'Keefe and Karen Reed were not there when you arrived, right?
Correct.
And the food that you ordered, do you remember what appetizers you would have gotten?
Probably like potato skins and some sort of chicken tenders. I would guess. It's 2 years ago, so I don't remember exactly.
And did you order a drink along with the appetizers?
I believe so.
All right, and that would have been the Miller Lite that you talked about?
Correct.
Then not long after you got there, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins showed up, correct?
Correct.
And you had met Brian Higgins prior to that night.
Yes.
In fact, you had testified that you had seen him around quite a bit, correct?
A few times.
And you knew him, I believe your testimony was, from him working inside the Canton Police Station, correct?
I knew that he worked there.
Did you testify on direct examination, quote, I knew him from working inside Canton PD?
Yes.
And you've been inside Canton Police, correct?
Maybe twice in my life.
You knew that Brian Albert, your brother, and Brian Higgins were friends, correct?
I knew they knew each other.
So are you saying that they were acquaintances?
No, I guess they're friends.
You guess they're friends?
Yeah, they're friends.
Was there something confusing about my question the first time I asked it?
Objection, Your Honor.
In any case, would you agree that shortly before Brian Albert and Brian Higgins arrived at the waterfall, or shortly after they did, there was a couple whom, I believe you call them a Greek couple because their last name is difficult to pronounce for everybody. But do you remember them being there?
Yes.
All right. If I mention the name Kolakithis, does that ring a bell? Or do you...
That's them, yeah.
That's them, okay. And the whole group was either standing or sitting around a high-top table?
Correct.
And at 9:45 p.m., you texted John O'Keefe while you were at the waterfall, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree with me that the language of your text was, quote, get over here or I'll fuck up your lawn, end quote?
That was one of the texts. We have that printed out that I can take.
I may just have a moment. May I approach?
Sure.
Do we have, let's say, evidence number?
It's remarked.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't think I asked to approach.
Go, that's fine.
Thank you. I've placed a document before you, sir. Take a look at that and tell the jury whether or not you recognize it.
Yeah, I recognize it.
What is it?
It's a text message, 2 text messages.
Okay. And who are the participants in that text message exchange?
Me and John.
And what is it that you said and at what time?
So the first one.
Approach.
Okay? Come on over. As I did yesterday. So before you consider any electronic communication in your deliberations, you must first find that it's more likely true than not true that the person who either authored or sent or created or transmitted the communication was in fact John O'Keefe and this witness, Chris Albert. If you do not find that it's more likely true than not that John O'Keefe sent one or that this witness was the person who sent the message or transmitted it, then you may not consider it in deciding this case. So you have clarification a bit, Mr. Yannetti, at this point?
I do, yes. And just for the record and for the juror's edification, this is part of Exhibit 48, which is already in evidence. But I would ask that this particular exchange be posted on the screen with the court's permission.
Sure.
Okay. And so you'd agree that when you say it was 2 text messages, they're both with regard to the same subject, correct?
What do you mean? I don't follow you.
It says get over here, right? And then the second is a continuation of that. If not, I'm going to fuck up your lawn, correct?
So you mean that's to tell him to come over to the waterfall?
Right.
Okay, I just didn't understand what you meant.
That's fine. So you're telling John O'Keefe this, correct?
Yeah, I'm telling him to come over and meet us.
All right. And that little emoji, that face emoji after, if not, I'm going to fuck up your lawn, that's...
Yeah, it's a laughing face.
Right, so you're...
It's a joke.
And you're cracking up.
Yeah, it's a joke.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Apologize.
Okay, well, we can take that down. At about 10:45 p.m. or so, I believe you testified that was when John O'Keefe walked into the bar with his girlfriend, Karen Reed.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Would you agree with me that between the time you arrived and the time you eventually left, that you did go up to the bar within that establishment a few times
I'm sure he did.
and bought a few rounds of drinks,
I'm sure.
including that one round of fireball shots?
Correct.
What was the state of your sobriety when John and Karen arrived?
Probably fine. Fine.
All right. You didn't feel like intoxicated
No.
or unable to, perceive what's going on. You were still in control of your faculties.
Yes.
And is it true that after John and Karen arrived that your wife, Julie, didn't want to stay any longer or too much longer?
She didn't want to. She had a headache, so she wanted to go home.
Right. And by that point in time, you had been there about an hour, maybe a little less.
When Karen and John arrived?
Right.
Yeah, about an hour.
And you were having fun.
Sure.
And so Julie drove home, but you stayed, correct?
Correct.
All right. And in terms of Karen Reed's drinking, as far as you could see, she had that glass that she came in with that appeared to have a clear liquid in it, correct?
Correct.
And I believe you said either a lime or a lemon?
Thought I said a lime, but yeah.
Okay. And you assumed that was, vodka and soda water or vodka and some type of mixer, correct? That was clear?
Correct.
And if she was, while drinking that night, if she was mixing in water in between alcoholic drinks, it would have been impossible for you to discern which drinks were water and which drinks were vodka, correct?
Yeah, I would have no idea.
You can't tell that by eyeballing a drink, right?
No.
Because both liquids are clear.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
in order to discern that, you'd actually have to be given a sip to see, right? Okay. But in any case, Karen did not appear to be under the influence of alcohol to you.
I didn't notice anything.
She wasn't stumbling, correct?
Nope.
She wasn't swaying.
I didn't notice.
She didn't appear to be unbalanced, correct?
I didn't notice anything.
She wasn't slurring her words.
Nope.
She wasn't talking gibberish, correct?
No.
She was engaging in normal conversation and she appeared to be under control.
Yeah.
And would you agree with me that she also appeared to be affectionate with John O'Keefe?
I wasn't really watching their interactions too much, to be honest.
But in any case, you never saw any arguing between the two of them.
I wasn't really paying attention to their
And
interactions.
you didn't perceive any tension between them, correct?
I didn't notice anything irregular.
Okay. And from your observations of Karen Reed that night, and you were there probably over 2 hours, were you not?
Total? About that, yeah.
From your observations of Karen that night, you would have had no problem with her driving a car, correct?
I wouldn't even have thought about it.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that of the group that you had met out, that you were the last person to leave the waterfall on January 29th of 2022?
I believe so.
Now, you previously, you testified on direct examination today, I believe, that you thought you got home between 12:05 and 12:10 a.m. on January 29th, correct?
It's what I remember.
If I suggested to you that you didn't even leave the bar until 12:13 a.m., would you quarrel with that?
Would I quarrel with it?
Yes.
No, I guess not. I mean,
Right. And is your memory exhausted as to the precise time that you left the bar?
is it exhausted?
Right. In other words, do you not remember the precise time that you left the bar that early morning?
It's over 2 years ago. I don't know the precise time.
Right.
That's why I said between 12:05 and 12:10.
That answers my question. Thank you. Could we have Exhibit 50? Well, with the court's permission, can I publish Exhibit 53? It's a short clip from the waterfall. Sure. I think we need to back it up. Maybe start. If we could pause it for a second, please. Mr. Albert, you would agree with me this was clearly the end of the night?
Sure.
The lights are all on at this point.
Yes.
The bar appears to have largely emptied out.
Yes.
Okay, continue, please. Pause it. Oh, there we go. My co-counsel is much better at this than I. Do you know who that person is who's leaving the bar at this point at 12:13 and 43 a.m.?
Christina, it might be better without that spotlight.
Okay.
See it now?
That's fine.
Yeah. I believe it's me.
Continue, please. Okay. You can take that off the screen. So, having now viewed that video with the timestamp of 12:13 and about 43 seconds or so, does that refresh your memory as to when you left the waterfall?
Yes.
That would mean it would have been impossible for you to get home to Maple Street by 12:05 or 12:10, correct?
Correct.
Now, it was about maybe a 7-minute walk home. Would you agree with me?
From Waterfall to Maple? No, I said 7 minutes from D&E to Waterfall. Waterfall to Maple is probably less than 5 minutes.
So it's your testimony that D&E is closer to the waterfall than the waterfall is to Maple Street?
D&E's farther away from Waterfall than, farther away from where I live than Waterfall is.
I understand.
Oh, I don't follow you, I'm sorry.
I'll try to clarify. I
Okay.
don't mean to be confusing here.
It's fine.
I'm not asking about the distance between D&E and your home. I'm trying to compare or ask you to compare the distance between D&E and the waterfall and then the waterfall and your home. Do you see the difference?
I think so.
Would you agree with me that your home is farther from the waterfall than D&E Pizza is from the waterfall?
I don't follow you, I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's take it step by step. D&E Pizza to the waterfall, are they on the same street?
Yes,
How many establishments, if you know, are between D&E Pizza and the waterfall?
just a few.
Okay, so it's a very short walk from
Yes.
D&E Pizza to the waterfall.
Yes.
Correct? Your home on Maple Street is not on the same street as the waterfall, correct?
It's off of the same street.
But it's not on the same street.
No,
And your home on Maple Street is farther from the waterfall than D&E Pizza is to the waterfall. Is it not?
correct.
Okay.
I didn't understand it earlier.
No, I know, and I'm trying to work through this because, I'm not trying to trick you here. I just want to get the answer. So you would agree with me that it would take you longer to walk home from the waterfall than it would take you to walk to the waterfall from D&E Pizza?
Correct.
All right. And I believe you said that one walk was 7 minutes and one walk was maybe less than 5 minutes, correct?
Yes,
All right. The 7-minute walk would have been the walk home as opposed to the walk to the waterfall, correct?
yes,
All right. So you have agreed that you left the bar at 12:13, almost 12:14, according to the video, and it would have taken you about 7 minutes to walk home, correct?
not exactly sure how. I
Can I
think,
see Counselor Tybor for just a second, please?
Thank you.
It's been pointed out to me that I think we're not making the connection here, and I think it might be my fault. with regard to the timing of how long it took you to go home, I believe your best estimate is about 5 minutes? Is that your testimony? And when I say home, I'm not talking about from D&E Pizza. I'm talking about that early morning when you're at the waterfall.
I understand, yeah. I'd say around 5 minutes, I think, from the waterfall to Maple Street.
Fair enough. So now, if you're leaving the bar at like close to 12:14, as indicated on the video, you're getting home somewhere around 12:19, 12:20, correct?
Roughly, yeah.
And what were you wearing that night?
Blue jeans, sneakers, I think, and a sweatshirt.
Okay. And it had started to snow by that point.
A little bit.
So the ground was a little bit either slushy or wet.
Not slushy, but could have been wet.
Could have been wet. And the snow had not yet started to accumulate, or had it?
It didn't start. No.
All right. So you're walking home, but it was cold. Correct?
Correct.
And would you agree that in the best case scenario, you might have had a little bit more clothing on for that cold walk home?
I think I had a sweatshirt on.
Right, but you could have used something else, right?
Oh, probably.
In light of the weather?
Probably.
All right. Because you testified that by the time you got home, you were pretty cold, right?
Correct.
You hadn't, if it had been about a 5-minute walk, that was enough time for you to walk in almost shivering, correct?
Sure.
And given that there was precipitation, the snow had started, the sweatshirt would absorb the moisture as opposed to repel it, correct?
Sure.
And so you were wet as well when you walked in, right?
Sure.
And by that point in time, you were tired, correct?
I don't remember if I was tired, but
Okay.
I don't remember if I was tired at that point.
Okay. You had worked all day
Correct.
till late in the day, actually into the evening, correct?
Correct.
Taking pizzas in and out of a hot oven,
Correct.
as well as other food that you serve as well, correct?
Yep.
And you're now, and by the way, you'd had a couple of drinks or a few drinks, whatever it was, at the waterfall, correct?
Correct.
And you decided not to go to your brother Brian Albert's house, correct?
Correct.
That was in part because you weren't up for the continued partying at that point, correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to go home.
Right. And so when you got home, would you agree with me that your first priority would have been getting out of the wet clothes that you were in?
Correct.
And where would you have done that within your
In
home?
my bedroom.
And is this a townhouse? Or is it a freestanding residence?
It's a condominium.
Condominium? How many floors?
There's 3 floors.
And your bedroom's on the top floor?
Correct.
And the entrance is ground level?
Correct.
When you first entered the home in those wet clothes, where was your wife, Julie?
Upstairs in the bedroom.
And was she already washed up and ready for bed?
She was lying in bed.
And where did you go when you walked in the ground level?
I went up to the bedroom,
All right.
took off my clothes, jumped in bed.
All right. And do you have a master bath with regard to your bedroom?
There's a bathroom, yeah.
All right. That would have been where you brushed your teeth
But yeah.
and washed up?
But I did. That's where I would do those things, but I didn't do them.
You didn't
those
do
things.
either of those things?
No.
Okay. Did you grab a drink of water before you went to bed?
Nope.
All right. So you essentially came home, and I think we agreed it was around 12:20 or so, give or take a minute.
Roughly.
And you made a beeline for your bedroom.
Correct.
Did you fall asleep shortly thereafter?
Soon after,
Within 5 minutes or so? 10 minutes?
I started to doze off. I don't know exactly how soon after I fell asleep.
All right. Sometime within 5 or 10 minutes, would you say?
I would say more like within 15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay. So with regard to getting home, and we'll call it 12:19, because I think that's more consistent with what you said, and understanding that it's just an estimate. If you're walking in the door at 12:19, it takes you maybe a minute to get upstairs.
About a minute,
You kicked off your sneakers downstairs, I imagine?
maybe. I don't remember. That was a long time ago.
Okay, and then you walked up 2 flights of stairs, right?
Probably ran up the stairs because I was cold.
Okay, all right. So you're getting up there around 12:20 or so, correct?
Roughly, yeah.
And you believe that you dozed off about 15 minutes later, which would have made it about 12:35?
Somewhere around there.
All right. Now, when you came home, you would agree with me that your son, Colin Albert, was not home, correct?
Not when I first got home.
And in fact, I think your testimony was that 10 minutes after you got home, he opened the bedroom door?
I think that's what I said, yeah.
Do you want to stick with that?
I'm just trying to recollect what I, thinking it over. So obviously it was a little bit longer.
Because you actually woke up when he opened the bedroom door, correct?
I don't think so.
Did you not just testify before this jury just, I don't know, maybe an hour ago, that you fell asleep and that your son, Colin, opened the bedroom door and woke you up to say goodnight?
Yeah, I guess that's what I said.
Okay. And when you testified to that on direct examination, that was when Mr. Lally was asking you questions, correct?
Correct.
And you knew that you were under oath at that time, correct?
Correct.
And you were trying to be as accurate as possible, correct?
Trying to be, correct.
All right. So in terms of the timing of this, assuming that he opened the bedroom door after you already fell asleep, if you're getting home upstairs to your bedroom around 12:20 and it takes you 15 minutes to go to bed, and that's around 12:35, then sometime after you're asleep, after 12:35, that's when Colin opens the bedroom door, correct?
I don't remember exactly.
Well, it's difficult for you to remember how long you'd been asleep for when Colin opened the bedroom door, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or longer, correct?
I don't know exactly.
Right. But it was some time after you fell asleep.
To the best of my recollection.
Now, with regard to your son, Colin, he obviously lived in the same neighborhood as John O'Keefe, because that's where your family lived, correct?
Correct.
And back in 2022, Colin Albert was 17 years old?
Correct. Part of the year.
And you knew that, like most teenagers, Colin drank alcohol with his buddies, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain for the jury who or what is Nebercracker?
What is Nebercracker?
Yes,
Like the character?
that's what I'm asking.
It's a character in a cartoon called Monster House.
And would you agree with me that Nebercracker in the movie Monster House was this kind of old curmudgeon who didn't want anybody on his lawn, correct?
The character, yes.
He was the get off my lawn guy, correct?
In the movie, yeah.
What was your nickname and your wife Julie's nickname for John O'Keefe?
Mr. Nebercracker.
All right. And your wife Julie actually had John O'Keefe plugged into his contacts as Nebercracker, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you were there one time when Julie showed Karen Reed, her phone to show how John O'Keefe was plugged in as Nebercracker, correct?
I believe so.
And this whole nickname started because of a conflict that Colin Albert had with John O'Keefe.
Not correct.
John O'Keefe complained to you about things that Colin was doing.
Not correct.
He would tell you that Colin used to throw beer cans or beer bottles in his bushes, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
So you can answer that, what's your answer?
That is not correct.
John O'Keefe told you that Colin used to flip him off, correct?
Not correct.
And say F you to him.
Never.
Colin used to cut through his yard.
Nope, that was Dylan.
You knew that John didn't like people cutting through his yard, correct?
No, I don't know that to be true.
Okay. So is it your testimony that John O'Keefe invited kids to cut through his lawn all the time?
I don't understand. Is that a question?
It was a question. I guess let me withdraw that and ask this. If John O'Keefe is never cracked, and he's the get off your lawn guy, are you denying that he doesn't like people cutting through his lawn?
Do you want me to, can I explain?
I just asked for an answer to my question. Mr. Lally will get up after I'm done, and I'm sure you can explain whatever you want.
So no, he's not no.
All right. Well, you would agree with me that there was a time when John O'Keefe was not home that you and your wife, Julie, went to his house.
That is correct.
And you entered onto his property, correct?
On his front property, yes.
And you had drinks in your hand.
Correct.
And you thought it would be funny to have a photo taken of you and your wife with drinks in your hand on his property, correct?
Correct.
And you knew it would be funny because you knew it would annoy him, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh, you can go ahead, can you answer that?
Yeah, he was actually asking us to watch his house while he was away.
Right, but that doesn't answer my question, which was he didn't ask you to go onto his property with drinks in your hand and take a photo, correct?
He asked us to watch his property.
Okay, but again, in answer to my question, the answer is no, he did not ask us to go on his property and take pictures of ourselves with drinks in our hand, correct?
Yeah, he didn't ask me to send him a photo.
All right. And you would agree with me that Nevercracker wouldn't like a photo of somebody on his lawn with drinks in their hands, correct?
The cartoon character, Nevercracker?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Next question, please,
Yes.
Ms. Giannetti.
I have the photo. May I approach?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Albert, I place two photographs before you. If you could take a look at those and tell the jury if you recognize what they depict.
I do.
What do those photos depict?
It's me and my wife straddling John's fence. We're giving a thumbs up in one of them and a smile in another one.
Okay. And you say John's fence, so that's actually on John's property, correct?
Part of it is, yeah. I mean, I don't know what the easement is from the street to the fence as ownership goes, but yeah.
All right.
I know the town owns a certain portion of it.
Would you agree with me that that photo was taken in April of 2021?
I'm not sure when it was taken, but if that's what you have for a date, then it's fine.
Okay. Who took that picture?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Where was your son Colin that night when you had that picture taken?
I have no idea.
Would you agree with me that you texted those photos, or somebody texted those photos, whether it was you or your wife Julie, to John O'Keefe?
Absolutely.
And offer those a fair and accurate representation of the photos that you took?
Yeah.
All right. I would offer those, Your Honor.
All right, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
And with the court's permission, may they be published for the jury?
Okay.
with regard to that first photo, is that, well, first of all, whose house is that in the background?
That's John's.
And that is you on the right and your wife Julie on the left?
Correct.
We have the second photo, please. Okay. That is also John's house in the background there?
Correct.
And again, that's you on the right and Julie on the left, correct?
Correct.
Okay, we can take that photo now. Now, would you agree with me that those photos give some context to the text that you sent him on January 28th when you were trying to get him to come out and you threatened to, quote, fuck up his lawn if he didn't come out that night?
What do you mean give context to?
Well, in other words, here you are texting him photos of you and your wife on his lawn, correct?
Yes.
And that's a common theme that explains the January 28th text where you were threatening to fuck up his lawn, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay. I just have one more area that I want to cover with you, sir. You previously confirmed that when you walked in your door on January 29th of 2022 after coming home from the waterfall, your son Colin was not home, correct?
It's correct.
At that time, you had no personal knowledge of where he had been that night, correct?
That's correct.
Since that time, you know that he was at your brother Brian's house that night, Brian Albert.
It's correct.
Your old home, correct?
Where I grew up, yep.
And you knew that address to be 34 Fairview Road.
Correct.
And you knew that that was the same house outside which John O'Keefe was found dead later that morning, correct?
Correct.
I may have a moment.
Sure.
Just one other question, sir. When you spoke to Trooper Proctor on February 10th of 2022, you would agree with me that you never mentioned that Colin Albert was at your brother Brian's house that night, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh,
I don't remember.
No further
Right.
questions.
thank you. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Albert, you were asked some questions about being a selectman. Were you a selectman at the time on January 28, 2022?
No.
About how long after that was it that you came?
Sometime in April that the election was over. April, second week in April, maybe?
So that's a photograph that you were shown with respect to yourself and the former Chief Berkowitz of the Canton Police. When was that?
It was a fundraiser, so it was probably like 2 or 3 weeks before the election. So January, February, March something, end of March maybe?
So well after January 28, 2022?
Yes.
And you were asked some questions about your brother selling the house. Now, prior to your brother selling the house, you had sold your house, correct?
Correct.
And why was that?
Why was that? It just made sense for us. You know, it was just a financial decision.
Kids were getting older, is that correct?
Yeah.
One was in the Navy.
Yep.
Another was about to go to college.
Correct.
And what, if any, relation did that have to your brother selling the house?
So once he found out that I was selling
Objection.
No, I'm going to allow it.
once he found out I was selling my house, he decided that it might be a good idea for him to sell his house. His kids were getting older. So I gave him my real estate's number, the guy who sold my house.
And that selling of the house, was that something that you would discuss with your brother prior to January 28th, 2022?
Yeah, soon after.
Let's move on from that.
Now, with regards, regard to your son Colin when he came home that night, you indicated that it was about 10 minutes after. Now, was that 10 minutes after you arrived home or 10 minutes after you got into bed?
10 minutes after I jumped into bed.
Now, with reference to your son Colin, he came home, you saw him that night, correct?
When he came home?
Yes.
Yeah, he just leaned his head in the door.
And when he leaned his head in the door, did you, similar to what I had asked you about Mr. O'Keefe, did you observe any sort of injuries or anything like that to his face?
No.
Saw your son the next day as well?
Yes.
Did you observe any injuries to him at any point in
None.
time? And you mentioned that you went over to your brother Brian Albert's house and both he and Mr. Higgins were there, correct?
Correct.
As far as your interactions with both Brian Albert and Brian Higgins that following day, what, if any, injuries did you observe on them that day?
None.
Now, with regard to the Nevercracker, what was sort of the origination of that?
It's a joke. It's so my son Dylan, who is my littlest one, he was cutting across John's lawn one day, coming home from the school, walking. This was before John had a fence that went this way, like on Pleasant Street. So it would just cut off like a couple of minutes. He ran across John's lawn one day. This is my littlest son, who I don't even know at the time. He might have been like 9, 10. I'm not sure exactly how old he was. And John yelled something to him. "Hey, kid, get off my lawn." So John was just making a joke. So Dylan got scared. He ran home and told my wife, Julie, and then Julie in turn called, called Jen maybe and said, "Hey, John just yelled at Dylan." And I think Jen reached out to John, and John felt terrible. And John came down the street. John asked what kind of candy Dylan liked, and John brought Dylan a bag of candy and just said, "Hey, I was just kidding." It was just, so from that point on, we called him Mr. Nevercracker, and it was a joke between John. John thought it was funny. And
Now, as far as those photographs that you indicated that you took on his fence,
Yeah.
sent to him when he was away, is that correct?
correct.
That was after he'd asked you to watch his house
Yeah.
while he was away?
Yeah.
And how did he respond to those photographs?
He thought it was hilarious. We actually showed him, other people that photo too. They thought it was funny.
All right, we're going to wrap it up, Mr. Allen.
One last question, Your Honor. So after you sent the text message as far as to come over here and then made the reference to his lawn, Mr. O'Keefe then came over to the lawn.
Yeah, he came over after.
Nothing further.
Nothing
Quickly,
further.
Jay. All right, you are all set, Mr. Albert. And
Thank you.
Jurors, we're going to take a recess. It's not going to be just sitting there like the jurors. It's not going to be too long because I'm going to end around 12.
If the witness would just stay where you
Yeah,
are.
please
Thank you.
stay there.
Sorry.
That's okay. So-
Jurors, if you'd fold your notebooks, please sit on your chairs. Follow me. All right, here we go.
So call about a 10-minute
You are
break, 'cause
muted.
I want to get more testimony.
Hey there, Karen Reed, trial watchers. You know what a lot of the trials we cover remind me? It's that you gotta be careful who you surround yourself with, who you let into your life. Do you really know? I mean, it's a scary thing to think about. Well, that's why I'm so thrilled to talk to you about the sponsor of this week's Law and Crime trial stream, truthfinder.com. Honestly, with our content, I really can't think of a better service that can provide actual safety for you guys. Why do I say that? I say that because Truthfinder is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. Their whole goal is to help people like you learn about the people in their lives. And here's how it works. You go on their website, truthfinder.com, and you type in a name. For instance, your new neighbor. Let's say your new neighbor is me, Jesse Weber. Make it easy. You type in my name, and within minutes and a paid subscription purchase, you can access unlimited reports that could include information like phone numbers, location history, criminal and traffic records, including possible arrests and criminal convictions. Goes without saying, but I don't have any of those. Truthfinder has been partnering with Law and Crime for a while now. We actually use it to research some of the cases that we've been covering. But in general, it can help provide peace of mind when you do these unlimited public records searches. Also, you know what's really useful? From within that report, you can search an address to see registered sex offenders that may live in that area too. That's the point. Unless you use Truthfinder, you may never know the reality about the people around you. Also, Truthfinder is just an incredible resource to use when reconnecting with people like long lost friends, family members you haven't spoken to in a while. You can use Truthfinder to help track down these people's information. It's just a great tool. Now, here's the kicker. Right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Live.
Please be seated, close back.
All right, Mr. Lally, your next witness, please.
May we approach before the next witness is called, Your Honor?
Okay. All right, so Mr. Lally, who's your next witness?
We'll call Miss Julie Albert to the stand.
Okay.
Please make standing face to face.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case now in here should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Julie Albert, Albert.
And where do you live now?
I live at 22 Maple Street in Canton.
And how long have you lived in Canton?
A little over 2 years.
And how long in total have you lived in Canton?
My whole life. 48 years.
And where did you live just prior to living on Maple?
I lived at 7 Meadows Avenue in Canton.
And how long a period of time did you live at 7 Meadows Avenue?
15 plus 20 years, about 20 years.
And do you have kids?
Yes, I have 3 boys.
And are you married?
Yes, I am.
What's your husband's name?
Christopher Albert.
And your 3 boys, how old are they?
My oldest, Christopher, is 25. My second son, Colin, is 20. And my youngest son, Dylan, is 16.
And do each of them, where do they live? Do they live with you?
They all live with me, yes.
And your husband, does he work?
Yes,
What does he do?
he owns a restaurant in Canton,
What's the name of the restaurant?
D&E Pizza,
And where is that located?
618 Washington Street.
Now, when you lived on Meadows Avenue, can you describe to the jury sort of, if you know, about how many houses were on Meadows?
I would say maybe 8 on each side.
And Meadows comes out to a main road, is that correct?
Yes, Pleasant Street.
And while you were living on Meadows Avenue, did you have occasion to come to know someone by the name of John O'Keefe?
Yes, I did.
And where did John live in relation to you?
John's house was at the top of the street, and there was 2 houses between John's house and my house.
And if you recall, about how long did you know John O'Keefe, or when did he move into Memphis?
I think he moved in 2017-ish, maybe. And I've probably known him since maybe 2019.
And how would you describe sort of your relationship with John O'Keefe?
We were friendly. We were neighbors. You know, I'd see him all the time coming in and out of the street, and because he's at the top of the street when I pulled out of the street. And we were friendly.
And in addition to you knowing Mr. O'Keefe, were there other sort of people that knew you that also knew him?
Yes, yes.
Who were some of those people?
Well, I knew John through Jennifer McCabe.
And who is Jennifer McCabe?
She's one of my closest friends.
Now, you knew that John had 2 children that he was guardian for?
Yes,
And you were familiar with both his niece and his nephew?
yes.
Now, at some point through Mr. O'Keefe, did you come to know somebody by the name of Karen?
Yes.
When about was it that you met Ms.
Maybe in like 2021, like, pulling in and out of the street if they were outside, if, a couple times out socially, probably in 2021, I would say.
And if you could, just so we're clear, do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom?
Yes, between her lawyers right over there.
That's a record of like identification
Okay.
by the witness. Now, on some social occasions that you were talking about, when you would see them out, would you have occasion to socially interact with Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Is that something that like you and your husband did together, or was it more of a group setting type?
No, a group setting.
And with reference to, did you have occasions where you would socially hang out or interact with Mr. O'Keefe in which Ms. Reed wasn't there?
I can only honestly remember one time, and that was, I don't even know if they were together at the time.
And had you ever socially interacted or spent time with Ms. Reed separate and apart from Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
Now, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
Do you recall what day of the week it was?
Friday.
And what, if anything, did you have plans for that particular evening?
The next day was my nephew's birthday. So we were a bunch of us were going to go out that night, the night before, to a bar in Canton.
And by the night before, you mean the night before his birthday?
Yes.
And that nephew, what was that nephew's name?
Brian Jr.
And if you know about how old was he turning, or well, let me start with this. How old is he now?
He's 24.
So just turned 24 a few months ago?
January, yep.
And so he would have been turning, what, 22 at that point?
Yes.
When we say we had plans to sort of go out, who was the we?
Myself, his mother, Nicole, my niece, Caitlin, and a couple of Brian's friends.
Now, and you mean Brian Jr.'s friends?
Yes.
And so Brian Albert Jr. has a mother named Nicole Albert, is that correct?
Yes.
And how is she related to you?
She's my sister-in-law. Our husbands are brothers.
So your husband Christopher has a brother?
Brian.
Brian. Okay. And that would be sort of
Brian Sr.
for lack of a better term.
Yep.
Your husband Christopher, how many siblings does he have?
6.
And Brian is the oldest?
The oldest, yes.
And so there were plans to go out that evening, the day before Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday, correct?
Yes.
And what were the plans? What did they sort of consist of?
We were just going to go to Waterfall.
And his Waterfalls, where is it?
It's a bar in Canton on Washington Street.
And from your husband's pizza shop at D&E to the Waterfall, about how far away are the two from each other?
Very close. I mean, 200 steps maybe. You can, very, very close.
Same side of the street or
No, opposite sides.
Now, when it came to that day, where did you go? Did you go to the Waterfall first or somewhere else, or if you know?
I went to my sister-in-law Nicole's house to pick her up.
And do you know the address where your sister-in-law and your brother-in-law live?
34 Fairview, where they lived, 34 Fairview Road.
And that was somewhere that you had been numerous occasions before?
Yes.
And when you arrived at 34 Fairview Road, you went inside the house?
I think I went inside for a moment, yeah, just to wait.
And do you know who, if anyone, did you see in there that you knew or recognized or didn't?
I know my niece Caitlin was in there, my nephew Brian. I don't recall. I don't recall who else was in there.
Your sister-in-law, Nicole, was she there?
Yeah, she was ready to leave. Yep.
And when you left, I'm using sort of you in the plural, so you drove, is that correct?
I drove. Yep.
And who, if anyone, went along with you in your car?
Nicole, my sister-in-law, and Caitlin, my niece. And Brian did not end up coming with us.
And so your nephew Brian, for whom you had initially made the plans to go out to celebrate, didn't end up coming?
Correct.
And why was that? If you know.
I don't think he was feeling up to it.
And if you know, about what time was it that you picked your sister-in-law and your niece up and then went to work?
I don't remember exactly, but I would probably say between maybe 7:30 and 8, 7:30, like around 7:30 maybe.
And you arrive at the waterfall, you go in. If you could just explain for the jury sort of when you walk into the door of the waterfall, where was it that the three of you went?
When you walk into the door, there's a couple high top tables, long high top tables in front of you, and we just sat down at a high top table right when you walk through the door.
Now, from your experience either that evening or prior evenings, on certain nights, does the waterfall have any kind of sort of entertainment?
Yeah, they always have, every week's different. They have bands.
And from your recollection, was there a band there that night?
Yes, there was.
And do you recall where you were seated in relation to the band?
I was sitting at the end of the high top table closest to the door that you walk in, and the band was to the right of me against a wall in kind of like an alcove, like a little against a wall.
And when you went there, was the band already sort of set up and playing, or did that happen later?
I think they set up while we were there. I think.
And so initially when you go there, do you go there and just have drinks, or did you eat something, or what?
We ate, and yeah.
And while you were there, as far as during sort of the meal portion of it, was there anyone else that joined you?
I know my niece's boyfriend, Tristan Morris, came. I don't remember exactly when it was during that, but I know he was there. And then during the meal part, I don't think during the meal part anyone else, I don't think.
So you recall, as far as the meal part was concerned, it's you, your sister-in-law Nicole, your niece Caitlin, and her boyfriend Tristan Morris.
Correct.
And Mr. Morris, did he stay for any extended period of time, or when was it that he left?
I know he stayed for a little bit, but I honestly can't remember what time exactly he left.
Now, your husband, was he working on that day?
Yes, he was.
And had you been in communication with him as to where you were going to be?
Yes.
And so the plan was basically for him to meet you at the waterfall when he was done with work?
Correct, yes.
And if you know, about what time was it that your husband, Christopher, came over to the waterfall?
Maybe not 9:30, 10, maybe. I don't remember exactly.
Just
yeah.
If you know approximate time.
Yeah.
So at some time around 9:30 or so, your husband, Christopher, comes over to the waterfall?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did he do when he got there?
I came in, yeah.
He came in. Did he get anything to eat, anything to drink?
Yeah, he probably ordered a drink and just stood by the table, I would think.
And you and the people in your group, were you drinking that night?
Yes.
What is it? Do you recall specifically what you had to drink?
I think I had just a couple glasses of wine.
And your husband, do you recall specifically what he had that night?
What he would drink is Miller Lite.
And that's sort of typically what he would drink when he was out?
Yes.
And your sister-in-law, Nicole, do you recall what she was drinking?
I would assume White Claw, a White Claw.
And same question with regard to your niece, Kate.
Yes, probably White Claw as well.
Now, while you were there, who, if any, so after your husband came in, who, if anyone else, sort of came in and joined the group that you were with?
My brother-in-law, Brian Albert, and his friend, Brian Higgins.
And obviously you know your brother-in-law, Brian Albert, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And
Is that yes?
You know...
Yes.
Thank you, no. You just have to answer obviously. So, did you know Mr. Higgins as well?
Yes.
And how did you know Mr. Higgins?
I just know him from being friends with my brother-in-law.
So you knew him just sort of through your brother-in-law, Brian, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And do you know when they arrived in relation to when your husband, Christopher, arrived?
I don't recall.
But some point after, correct?
Yes.
Then after they arrived, who, if anyone else, do you recall sort of arriving and joining in your group?
Jennifer McCabe and Matt McCabe. And there was a couple, I don't even know their name, Colakitis. They arrived. I don't know their first names. And John and Karen arrived shortly after that.
And just so we can clear up people, as far as Jennifer McCabe, you've already mentioned her, and Matthew, is that her husband?
Yes.
And the other couple that you were talking about, or sort of guessing their names, had you ever met them before?
No. Nope.
Not anybody that you're particularly friends with or anything like that?
No. I know them, who they are, from seeing them maybe at a sporting event or something, but I've never been introduced to them. No.
And when you say sort of sporting events in relation to what?
If they were at like a basketball game and I was at a game, like I've just seen them around. I'm assuming probably sporting events, probably a basketball game.
And I'm sure it's pretty well understood with this. I just want to clarify. So when you say sporting events, these are kids' sporting events?
Kids' sporting events, yes.
And so which kids' sporting events would you be at that you would see this couple that you didn't know? Your kids or something?
No, Jennifer McCabe's kids.
Okay. So you would go to sporting events with Jennifer McCabe's kids and see this couple then?
Yes.
And if you know about how long after this Brian Albert and Mr. Higgins arrived, did the McCabe's and this other couple arrive?
I don't remember exactly.
But after Mr. Albert and Mr. Higgins, correct?
Correct.
Now, then you mentioned Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed came in at some point as well?
So you
And-
have to make sure you say yes or no, okay? And the other thing you say, I assume or I guess, don't answer. If you don't know, you don't.
Okay.
And if you know, about what time was it that Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed came?
Well, before 11 o'clock?
Simon's good one. Okay. And with reference to when Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, Ms. Reed, came into the waterfall, where were you in relation to sort of the high top table that you were describing?
I was at the top of the high top table closest to the door.
And when they came in, where did Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant go?
John walked in and said hello and kept on walking, I think, to the bar. And Karen came in and stopped at the table to talk for a minute.
And during the time that she stopped at the table to talk for a minute, what, if anything, did she do?
She opened her jacket and had a glass and pulled the glass out and started drinking the drink.
And as far as the drink in the glass, what, if anything, did you observe as far as color or anything like that?
Clear.
And the glass that she had, could you see, so the clear liquid inside it, how much of the glass was full of that?
I don't recall.
And she placed it on the table, is that correct?
Yes.
And what was your reaction to that?
I think I laughed and said, made a comment like, you're crazy or something, just because she walked in with the glass.
Did you know where Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed had been coming from prior to them getting to the waterfall?
Yes.
And where were they coming from?
CF McCarthy's.
You're familiar with that establishment?
Yes.
And where is that in relation to the waterfall?
It's maybe 200 steps right next to my husband's restaurant.
So on the same side of
Opposite
Washington
side.
Street?
Opposite side.
On the same side of Washington Street as your husband's restaurant?
Yes.
Okay. In the same vicinity from D&E to Waterfall, CF McCarthy's
Yes.
Water.
Yes.
Now, over the course of the evening, did you have occasion to see Mr. O'Keefe? He was at a bar, he had something to drink, is that correct?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Over the course of the evening, did you have occasion to observe what, if anything, Mr. O'Keefe was drinking?
No, I don't believe. I left very shortly after they got there.
And so you left fairly shortly after they arrived?
Yes,
Okay. And if you know about how much time are we talking?
maybe 10, 15 minutes.
And why is it that you left?
I had a terrible migraine.
From the van being so close?
Yes,
And when you left, where did you go?
home.
And when you got home, as far as your children on that evening, who was home, who was out, if you know?
My youngest son was home, and my oldest son didn't live at home. He lived in California at the time. And my middle son was not home.
And so your oldest son, Christopher, he was in the Navy at that point?
He was in the Navy, and he was stationed in San Diego, yes.
And so your middle son, Colin, he was out. Did you know where he was?
Yes, he was at, I believe, his friend Michael Leonetti's house.
And at some point, did you learn that Colin had gone from that person's house to somewhere else?
Yes,
Is this him communicating with you?
yes,
And that other place that he went to, do you know where that was?
yes. My brother and sister-in-laws, Nicole and Brian Albert's house on Fairview Road.
And was that in relation to your nephew and his birthday?
Yes.
Now, while you were, if I could take it back to the waterfall just for a second. So while you were at the waterfall, obviously you see Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed come in. Do you recall what Mr. O'Keefe was wearing?
I know he had a hat on, he had jeans on, and he had something with a hood.
And from your observations, did you ever see him with like a winter coat or a jacket or anything like that?
I did not.
And with regard to the clothing that you observed him wearing, what if anything did you observe as far as the condition of that clothing? And that, I mean, was it torn, was it disheveled, anything like that?
No, nothing that I remember.
And with regard to Mr. O'Keefe, as far as his appearance, what if anything did you observe about him as far as injuries or anything?
Nothing.
Now, with reference to your group as far as at the waterfall, how would you describe sort of the overall demeanor or tone of the group and what was going on there?
Just normal. I thought it was just normal. Sitting listening to a band.
So at least during the time that you were there were no sort of arguments or disagreements or anything like that?
Nope. Nothing.
And specifically to Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, Ms. Reed, while you were there, during the short time that you were there when they were there, did you observe anything as far as any arguments or disagreements or anything like that?
No, I did not.
Now, at the time, so during that time between when they arrived, you mentioned that John went up to the bar, correct?
Yes.
And where did the defendant go?
She talked to me at the top of the table for a few minutes, and then I believe she made her way down the table to either Jennifer McCabe or the couple that was at the end of the table to speak with.
And was it during that period of time that you had enough with the migraine and went home?
Yes, I left very, very shortly after that.
During the time that you were there and you were speaking with the defendant down sort of your end of the table, what, if anything, was discussed as far as sort of where to go, what to do after the walk?
I do know that, I do remember, I'm sorry, that Karen had asked if we could go back to D&E, my husband's store, and make pizza, because that's something we frequently do if we're out at the end of the night, if we're hungry.
And was that something that you had discussed with Ms. Reed either on that date or on a prior day?
I believe we discussed just that we went there once, and we said next time she'll have to come with us.
And was that something that was discussed as a possibility or something that was going to happen that night?
I think right away I just wasn't going to do that because I wasn't feeling well, and I think I might have said talk to Chris because I wasn't going to do it.
And is that something that she mentioned over the course of that evening once, more than once, or something else?
Just once to me.
So when you get home, at some point, the rest of your family came home at some point in the evening, correct?
Yes,
And who came home first? Your husband, Christopher, or your son, Colin?
my husband.
Do you know about what time that was?
I want to say about after 12, maybe 12:10, around there.
So sometime around 12:10?
Sometime around 12:10, yes.
And what, if anything, do you recall specifically about when your husband, Christopher, came home?
He came upstairs to my room. He was shivering because it was cold out, and he immediately went to the bathroom, got undressed, and got into bed.
And your son, Colin, have you been in communication with
Yes.
him over the evening?
Yes.
And about how long was it after your husband came home that your son, Colin?
10 to 15 minutes.
And were you essentially waiting up for him?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Is that sort of common practice?
Yes. I do not go to bed until my kids are home.
And is there another common practice as far as when your kids come home, where do they go when they first come in?
They immediately will always come in the door, maybe grab a water out of the fridge and come upstairs and give me a kiss goodnight and tell me that they're home.
Now, did that happen on this occasion?
Yes.
And so Colin came into your room at some point?
Yep, he came right upstairs. Yes.
And when Colin came into your room and he came upstairs, did you have occasion to observe him as far as talk to him, obviously?
Yes, we talked for a minute. He asked me if I was feeling better. And yeah, we talked for a moment.
And during that conversation that you had with Colin, similar to what I asked you with regard to Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, injuries or anything did you observe on your son, Colin?
None.
And fair to say the next day, at some point, you talked to and had interaction with your son?
Yes.
And what, if any, injuries or anything did you observe?
None. None.
So I know this is sort of hard, so wait till Mr. Lally finishes his question before answering, okay? Thank you.
Now, after your son Colin came home, and you eventually went to bed, is that right?
Yes.
And turning your attention to the next morning, the Saturday morning of the 29th, about what time was it that you woke up?
I woke up about 8-ish.
And with regard to your nephew, Brian Jr., whose birthday it was now on the 29th, what, if any, sort of tradition do you have with respect to him this birthday?
Every year on his birthday, I go to Dunkin' Donuts. I get him 6 donuts, and I bring them to the house, and I leave them there with a card before he gets up. So when he wakes up, they're there. I've been doing it for years.
And is that what your intention was on this morning as well?
Yes.
And is that what you did on that?
Yes.
Now, when you woke up, probably like most people, at some point did you look at your phone?
Yes.
And when you looked at the screen to your phone, what, if anything, did you see?
I had a missed call from my friend Jen McCabe.
And was there any sort of notation in regard to the missed call as to what time that missed call had come in?
It was 5:55 maybe?
So sometime earlier in the morning.
Early morning, yes.
And beyond the missed call, was there any other sort of stamp or notification on the phone as far as a voicemail, text message?
Nope. I'm sorry. No, there was not.
And not from Ms. McKay, correct?
Correct.
And not from anybody else?
Correct.
And at any point in time on that morning over the phone, did you speak with Ms. McKay?
No, I did not.
And did you call her? So you didn't call her back or anything like that?
I did not.
And so after you wake up, at some point you go to Dunkin' Donuts and get the 6 donuts?
Yes.
And where did you go with those?
I drove to 34 Fairview.
And when you arrived at 34 Fairview, where did you park in relation to the house?
I pulled into the driveway.
And when you came up to the house and you were driving to the house at this point, what was the weather like?
It was coming down. The snow was coming down pretty good.
And with reference to the house, what, if anything, did you notice out of the ordinary with regard to the house or the street or anything else?
Jennifer McCabe's car was in the driveway.
And as far as any other vehicles on the street or anything like that, what was going on at that point?
I don't recall. I don't.
Nothing you can recall?
No.
About what time was this that you got there?
8:30, 9 o'clock. 8:30. Around that.
And when you get there, you pull in the driveway, what did you do?
I opened my car door. I got out to walk to the car in front of me to leave the donuts and card inside my nephew Brian's car. And Brian Albert came to the door. Brian Albert Sr. came to the door, and he told me to come in, asked me to come in for a second. And I said that I didn't need to. And he said, I'm just leaving this gift for Brian Jr. And he said, no, just come in for a second. So I went into the house.
And when you walk into 34 Fairview Road on that morning, who, if anyone else, was there?
Nicole Albert, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Jennifer McCabe, and Matt McCabe.
And where were they in relation to the house?
In the kitchen.
And what, if anything, did they tell you at that time?
When I first walked in, nothing. Everyone was just sitting there, and I was looking around, and everyone was visibly upset. And I asked, what's going on? And another maybe 30 seconds went by, and Jen said, something's happened to John. And I said, John, she said, John O'Keefe. And I said, is he okay?
Objection.
No, I'm going to allow it.
I said, is he okay? And she said, we don't know. And that was that.
And after hearing that information, how long were you at your brother and sister-in-law's house that night?
Probably about half hour, 45 minutes, maybe.
And where did you go from there?
I went home to wake my husband up to let him know what had happened.
And at some point after you go home and wake up your husband, where did you and your husband go?
We went back to third. I woke up my husband, told him what had happened, and we went back to Fairview.
And so the second time that you had gone back to Fairview, how long a period of time were you there that time?
I would say probably half hour, not long.
And then after that half hour or so, where'd you go after that?
Back home to my house.
Now, during either of those occasions when you were at 34 Fairview Road on the morning of the 29th, you had occasion to talk and observe Brian Albert Sr., correct?
Yes.
And similar to questions that I asked you with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and your son Colin, what, if any, injuries or anything out of place did you note with respect to Brian Albert Sr.?
Nothing that I saw.
And, same question with respect to Mr. Higgins, as far as you made observations and spoke at least in the same room as him on that morning?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you observe as far as injuries or anything else on Mr. Higgins?
Nothing.
When you woke up your husband that next morning, your other two sons, being Colin and Dylan, they were at home still?
Yes, they were at home still asleep.
And with regard to when you went to Fairview, came back with your husband, went back to Fairview, and then came back again, were they still asleep?
I don't remember.
You recall, well, let me put it this way. As far as your sons, did either of your sons come back with you to Fairview Road that day?
No, they did not.
And do you recall whether or not either Colin or Dylan was awake when you left the second time to go to Fairview?
I don't.
At some point, a few days after this, did you have occasion to meet with a couple troopers from the state police?
Yes, I did. They came to my home.
When you say they, how many of them came to you?
There were two.
And you spoke to them that day in reference to what you had observed at the waterfall, everything you just testified.
Yes, I did.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just one last question. When you, Mrs. Albert, when you came over to Fairview Road that first time with the donuts, as far as the inside of the house, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the condition of the home or anything about the home that seems abnormal or out of place or off, from the evening before when you were there?
Nothing.
I have nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Gianetti?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Albert.
Good afternoon.
You and I have never met, correct?
Correct.
I just wanted to pick up on a question and an answer that Mr. Lally asked you and that you responded to. He had just asked you whether or not a few days later you spoke with a couple of state troopers. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
And your answer was yes?
Yes.
You would agree with me that it was more than just a few days later, correct?
I
It
don't
was
recall.
February 10th of 2022 that two state troopers came to speak with you and your husband, Chris, correct?
Correct.
And so we're talking about 13 days later, almost 2 weeks later, correct?
If that was the date, yes, correct.
Prior to February 10th, no investigator from this case bothered to talk to you or your husband, correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of the two investigators who did come, you knew one of them quite well, did you not?
I knew them. I wouldn't say quite well, but I knew them.
Okay, and when you say you knew them.
Him. I'm sorry, him.
Okay. And who was it that you knew?
Michael Proctor.
Michael Proctor was the brother of one of your close friends, correct?
Correct.
You're close friends with Courtney Proctor, correct?
I am.
And by the way, your maiden name is Daniels, correct?
Yes, it is.
And you have a sister, Jill Daniels, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you would agree that Jill Daniels is also lifelong best friends with Courtney Proctor, correct?
Yes, she is.
And in terms of your relationship with Courtney Proctor, you socialize with her, do you not?
Objection.
Do you?
Occasionally, yes.
Go out for drinks with her, correct?
Yes.
You've attended parties with her, correct?
Yes.
You've also provided childcare for her children, correct?
Yes.
Objection. Move to strike.
All right, I'll see you at sidebar on this, Ms. Gianetti. No, everybody.
So, Ms. Albert, you provided childcare for Courtney Proctor's children?
Objection.
Need a time frame, Mr. Union.
Have you ever provided childcare for Courtney Proctor's children?
Objection.
So you need a time frame.
Before January of 2022, did you provide childcare for Courtney Proctor's children?
Yes.
When?
Twenty nineteen. 2019.
Just that 1 year?
Yeah, it was pre-COVID. And then when COVID happened and everything shut down, I wasn't helping her any longer.
Okay.
And then occasionally after, I would help just on an as needed basis
Okay.
after COVID.
And during that year of 2019, how often did you watch her children?
2 days a week.
And she had a boy and a girl?
Correct.
What were their names?
Jack and Caroline.
And Jack and Caroline were Trooper Proctor's niece and nephew, correct?
Yes.
The Proctor family entrusted you with the care of their children, correct?
Objection.
It's sustained as asked.
You know that Michael Proctor is a state trooper, correct?
Yes.
You knew that he also was from Canton?
Yes.
You knew his wife, Elizabeth Proctor?
Yes.
And you were also aware that Courtney Proctor had recommended you to also watch Michael Proctor and Elizabeth Proctor's children, correct?
Objection. Move to strike.
That objection sustained.
But you go back a long way with Courtney Proctor, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you were certainly at her wedding, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your son was a ring bearer at that wedding.
Objection.
All right, so we'll sustain that through this witness.
You've spent time at Michael Proctor's childhood home, have you not?
Yes.
You've been to the pool at the Proctor's house, correct?
Yes.
May we approach?
Sure.
many times have you been to the Proctor's pool?
I'd say maybe a dozen.
And you've certainly taken your children there as well?
Yes.
Colin has been to the Proctor's pool?
Yes.
And you've seen Michael Proctor's mother and father at that pool, correct?
Yes.
You've seen Courtney Proctor and her husband at that pool, correct?
Yes.
You are very close with Courtney Proctor, correct?
How would you define very?
Well, I guess I'd ask you to define very close. Do you deny that you were very close with Courtney Proctor?
No, what?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, go ahead, next question. You got your answer.
I didn't hear the answer.
Go ahead, repeat that.
Do you deny that you were very close with Courtney Proctor?
No.
Okay. You talk regularly, correct?
Yes.
You text each other, correct?
Yes.
You also talk by phone.
Very rarely.
Is it fair to? Did you say very rarely you talk to
Phone.
Courtney Proctor by phone?
Usually it's text.
But do you stand by that testimony that you talk to Courtney Proctor very rarely by phone?
Do we have a time frame? Do you mean now, or do you mean then?
Let me ask you this. Between February 1st of 2022 and September 6th of 2022, did you only speak rarely with Courtney Proctor?
I don't recall.
Were you using Courtney Proctor as an intermediary to communicate with Michael Proctor about this case?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, I was not.
Are you aware that between February 1st of 2022 and September 6th of 2022, you and Courtney Proctor spoke by phone 67 times?
Objection.
Were you aware of that?
No, I don't know the exact count.
Do you deny that you spoke 67 times?
I don't deny it, but I don't recall the exact amount of times.
Okay, so you don't deny that you spoke 67 times. You still want to maintain your testimony that you only talked very rarely with Courtney Proctor during that time period.
I just don't remember the exact amount of times.
Well, you know that my client, Karen Reed, was arrested in connection with this case on February 1st of 2022, do you not?
I do.
You spoke to Courtney Proctor that date for 12 minutes by phone, correct?
I don't recall exactly. I don't remember exactly.
May I approach?
Sure.
Before I approach, your memory's exhausted as to whether you spoke to Courtney Proctor that day, and if so, how long the two of you spoke?
Yes.
Sure.
I'm showing you a document with a number of.
Just show it to us.
Right. No, I just wanted to point out which one that I'm pointing out. So the third, I was going to say a number of lines. The third line down, if you would take a look at that specific date and time and see if that refreshes your memory about whether and how long you spoke to Courtney Proctor on February 1st of 2022.
Can you see that, or do you need glasses?
No, I can see it.
I do have a pair of readers that I need as well if you need to borrow them.
Yes, if I could.
Of course.
Thank you. I
And,
left mine downstairs.
I just got these and it's like the
Mr.
middle-
Yannetti, just bring them up, please.
It took me a while to figure them out, but anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's the third line down.
Third line down. Yes, I see it. I don't recall.
Okay.
It's a long time ago. Thank you.
And you say that having seen this record, it does not refresh your memory that you spoke to Courtney Proctor for.
Don't, it does not refresh your memory. That's where you have to leave.
Okay. Did Courtney Proctor tell you the day of my client's arrest on February 1st that she had been discussing the case with her brother that day?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you speak to Courtney Proctor that day in any fashion?
What day exactly?
The day of my client's arrest on February 1st of 2022.
That was on the sheet you just gave me?
It was.
Well, I did, obviously, if it was on that sheet.
Okay. And when you talked to her, did she tell you that she had discussed the case with her brother?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were you notified that Karen was going to be arrested?
Objection.
Sustained.
What did you discuss?
I don't recall.
The next day, February 2nd of 2022, was the day that my client was arraigned back in Stoughton District Court. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
You spoke to Courtney Proctor 3 times that day before my client's publicly televised arraignment at 9 a.m. Did you not?
Again, I don't remember.
After the arraignment, you spoke to her again for 27 minutes, beginning at 10:58 a.m. Did you not?
I don't recall.
Okay. So your testimony is, well, strike that. My client's arrest was pretty big news in Massachusetts, wasn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
You were aware that my client had been arrested, correct?
Yes, I had seen it on the news.
You were aware that she was being arraigned the very next day, were you not?
Yes.
This case involved your family, did it not?
How do you mean it?
Well, you knew that John O'Keefe was found dead on your brother-in-law, Brian Albert's lawn, correct?
Correct.
So necessarily, your family was involved in this case, correct?
Somewhat, yes.
And you knew that ultimately you'd probably be talked to by investigators from this case, correct?
I assume so, yes.
Right. Didn't happen for 13 days, but ultimately they did come, correct?
Yes.
All right. So this case had to have been pretty big news within the Albert family, was it not?
Well, yes. Yes.
You were discussing it with your husband, correct?
Yes.
You were discussing it with your other relatives, correct?
Yes.
You were discussing it with your friends, correct?
I don't know about my friends, but
Okay.
yeah.
So is it your testimony that with all of this going on, you confined your discussions about this case just to your specific family members?
Not necessarily.
No. I mean, clearly, you would have talked to Courtney Proctor about this, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. So, folks, why don't we end here? All right. You'll have to be back tomorrow for your classes. And jurors, the 3 cautions: please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into the case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it and let us know. I'll see counsel at sidebar or the jurors. Thank you very much.
Jurors is closing your notebooks and leaving
Okay. See you tomorrow morning.
All rise for the court, please.
Hey there, Karen Reed, trial watchers. You know what a lot of the trials we cover remind me? It's that you gotta be careful who you surround yourself with, who you let into your life. Do you really know? I mean, it's a scary thing to think about. Well, that's why I'm so thrilled to talk to you about the sponsor of this week's Law and Crime trial stream, truthfinder.com. Honestly, with our content, I really can't think of a better service that can provide actual safety for you guys. Why do I say that? I say that because Truthfinder is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. Their whole goal is to help people like you learn about the people in their lives. And here's how it works. You go on their website, truthfinder.com, and you type in a name. For instance, your new neighbor. Let's say your new neighbor is me, Jesse Weber. Make it easy. You type in my name, and within minutes and a paid subscription purchase, you can access unlimited reports that could include information like phone numbers, location history, criminal and traffic records, including possible arrests and criminal convictions. Goes without saying, but I don't have any of those. Truthfinder has been partnering with Law and Crime for a while now. We actually use it to research some of the cases that we've been covering. But in general, it can help provide peace of mind when you do these unlimited public records searches. Also, you know what's really useful? From within that report, you can search an address to see registered sex offenders that may live in that area too. That's the point. Unless you use Truthfinder, you may never know the reality about the people around you. Also, Truthfinder is just an incredible resource to use when reconnecting with people like long lost friends, family members you haven't spoken to in a while. You can use Truthfinder to help track down these people's information. It's just a great tool. Now, here's the kicker. Right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LCLive.